Hello everyone, welcome to my studio. I'm Kristen Olson Stone. I'm going to show you how to work with a bad photograph, not a terrible photograph, but compositionally a photograph that just would never work as a painting if you did a drawing of it the way that everything's placed in it. But I'm going to show you how to make a beautiful composition, a beautiful painting from this bad photograph. So this is my paper. I'm going to be using Rembrandt professional all cotton watercolor paper today to do this demonstration, and one of my tiny watercolor sets. I'll put in the description a list of all the exact paint colors and also the paper. I'll be painting today with a silver brush, black velvet brush, and this is a number 6. I'll be able to do the whole painting with a number 6 brush. So let's get started. Looking at this reference photo, the pots are beautiful. They look like Mexican ceramic pots, and the colors are just gorgeous. They have beautiful patterns, but they're sort of stacked all up along the right side of the photograph. So what I did was simply rearrange them. And I looked at my paper and I decided I wanted to do a horizontal composition. And so I put the tallest painting on the left vertical third, the left third section of the paper. And then I tucked the other one in behind it so that I have an area of overlap, and that was on purpose. And then the pot that's sort of rounded and squat, I put on the right by itself. And I very loosely drew in some of the patterns that I saw on the pots. And then for a little bit of life, just a little extra touch, I put in a European robin sitting on the side of a pot. If you're familiar with my artwork, I do this all the time. I like to add a little life to my paintings, and very often it's a bird or some other animal. I did my drawing first with a pencil, and then I drew over it with pen, and then I erased all of the pencil marks. And while I was doing the drawing, I wet all of my colors by putting just a little dot of water onto each one with my paintbrush. So I'm going to start with the bright pink flowers. This is a beautiful color called Quinacridone Rose Reddish. So it's similar to Quinacridone Rose, but it's a little bit more red. So it's a really beautiful color. Makes fabulous violets also. So I'm going to go around, and everywhere I see a place to put this color, I'm going to put it down. I want to just carry this color all around the painting. When I'm distributing color, I think of making like a web of color. And eventually I have little bits of each of my colors all over the painting, and that just works really well. Everything feels very connected that way. Now I'm using Pyrole orange, and I mixed it with cadmium yellow. So Pyrole orange is a really beautiful color. It's a very bright orange and close to yellow on the color wheel, but definitely an orange, and it's transparent. So it's fabulous to mix with a semi-transparent color like pure cadmium yellow. I always like to have a combination of transparent and semi-transparent colors in my palette. I just find my paintings look better, and they have richer tones when I have a mixture of transparent and semi-transparent colors. Now I'm going to get this color on my brush, which is permanent red medium. So I've gone from Quinacridone Rose Reddish to orange for the marigolds, and now I'm going to put in some bright red. And this is a very bright red. It's absolutely beautiful color. And I'm just loosely painting these flowers. I'm not making any indications of petals, just the flowers. Just light marks of color to indicate where I see the color. And it's going to read visually as a flower just because of its color. It doesn't have to have the shape of a flower. Now I'm going to move on to some of the bright yellow flowers. Some of the marigolds are orange and some of them are bright yellow. And there's a couple of nice yellow ones in this pot as well. And now I'm going to move on to the greenery. So I'm going to start with sap green. And I've got a little cadmium yellow mixed or in my palette lid already, so I'm going to use some of that to mix in with it. So whenever you're painting greens, you want to have a variety of warm greens and cool greens. So warm greens are yellowish greens, cool greens are bluish greens. When I start to put the greens down on the paper, I very often like to drop in other colors and let the colors mix around on the paper. So this is Cobalt turquoise. And I drop that into the sap green. Now I have that mixed in with the sap green. And now I'm going to drop in just a little bit of yellow. I always feel like when I put yellow onto a color, like if I just drop it in like that, it's like dropping in a little bit of sunshine. So cadmium yellow also mixes beautifully with cobalt turquoise. You can see already I have a really nice variety of greens, and all these colors work really well with each other. And that's important. I played around with a lot of different combinations of colors before I came up with these specific colors. So the next green I'm going to pick up is phthalo green yellow. So it's phthalo green, but it's more of a yellowish green than phthalo green by itself is more of a bluish green. So this is the yellow version. And it's definitely bluer than sap green, but it just has a beautiful tone. Phthalo colors are all transparent. So this is a nice pot of flowers because it has a lot of upward movement. These leaves are nice and tall. So I'm adding a few dark accents close to the bottom, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of this permanent red medium and add a few accents of that as well down towards the bottom. Just like that. Now I'm going to wipe off my lid and I'm going to work on some of the green around the little bird. So I'm going to go back to sap green and I'm going to add some gold ochre to my sap green. And put that all around the little bird. I tend to leave a little bit of white showing when I'm painting around something. I can always come back in later and add more paint, but it's nice to have that white there as a little border. Kind of makes things look like they have a little sunlight falling on them. So I'm going to carry some of the green down around the sides of the pot and some of it up towards the flowers. And I'm going to add a little bit of cobalt turquoise. There we are. And now I'm going to start working on the greens on the center pot. So I'm going back now to the phthalo green yellow. And again, when I'm painting between the flowers and adding the greenery, I'm leaving some white space in between. And I'm making some upward strokes to indicate stalks of flowers and so on. I'm rinsing my brush. I'm going to pick up some cadmium yellow. This, by the way, is not cadmium yellow light, not medium, not cadmium yellow deep. It's just cadmium yellow. And it's pure cadmium yellow. It's not a hue. If you buy a cadmium yellow hue, that's not a ground cadmium or real cadmium color. That'll be made with dyes. So it will be transparent, which is a nice thing if that's what you want, but it won't have the effect of being ground pigment. And ground pigment does give body to your work, and I think I described it before as being kind of a richer looking color, richer looking paint when it dries. And if you're using paper that's textured, like cold pressed or hot pressed paper, those little granules of paint will give a really nice texture. And that adds another dimension of interest in your work. Now I'm going to pick up some French ultramarine, and I'm going to mix a violet right on the paper. So I'm just pulling this blue across. And now I'm going to drop some of this permanent red violet into the French ultramarine. And let the colors mix on the paper. So this way, some of the violet hues look more pink and some of them look more blue. And I'm going to add some of this phthalo blue green. So I have phthalo green yellow and phthalo blue green on this palette. And I'm going to put some of that at the base of this greenery right up to where it meets with the hanging pot, just to give a little bit of shadowing. And I'm going to do the same thing with that color around the robin. And in between some of these red flowers. Just to give a little extra definition and color interest. Now I'm going to paint the little robin. So I'm going to start with permanent red medium, and I'm going to mix it with some of this gold ochre. They're very, very cute little birds. So they have a red breast, and the back of them is gray, so I'm going to use burnt umber. And I'm going to mix it with a little permanent red violet. Just indicate the wing and the tail. I'm going to rinse my brush, and now I'm going to come to the back of it with a little bit of gold ochre. And he's got sort of a bluish gray front here, so I'm going to add some French ultramarine for shadowing and leave that white. So I'm going to do the eye with my pen and the beak. So I'm just going to emphasize the beak with a little bit of ink, and same with the eye. I can mix a dark color with these colors that I have, but it's easier to just put in something as tiny as an eye with my pen. Now it's time to paint the pot. So I'm going to start with the bright blue pot on the left. I'm going to use French ultramarine. So the light is coming from the left and casting shadows to the right. And so the left side of everything is going to be the brightest. So I'm going to pull this color around with water. And when it gets over to the right side, I'm going to make it darker. So notice how I'm not painting too carefully around all these little circles, because I want my painting to be loose and fresh, and I want to have fun painting it, so I don't want it to be too tedious. I don't want the painting process to be too tedious. I want it to be fun. So this reference photo came from one of my students' backyards, and she said, I really want to learn how to paint my backyard. I want to just enjoy my own flowers and have a beautiful painting of my backyard. And she sent me lots of pictures, but none of them were really workable without moving things around. And I thought, what a great exercise and what a great lesson that would be to post how to work with bad photos. So I actually have quite a few photos set aside that I'm going to do lessons with that are really difficult to work with, but workable nonetheless, and perfect for a painting lesson. So it's a topic I'm going to explore a few more times. So there's our blue, And I put the color on pretty strongly. Now I'm going to use some of the same blue on the next pot, but I'm going to be making little shapes with it. I'm just drawing around my ink lines. Just like that. And then this pot over here has a very nice light blue shape, which I've outlined with dark blue dots in it. So I'm going to put the light blue down first. And on the right side of the pot where it's in the shade, I'm going to be adding some permanent red violet to add to the blue to make it look like it's darker on the right side. So the shadow side is going to be darker. And I'm putting an extra dark line at the bottom of the pot, just like I did with this one. Now I'm going to pick up some nice cadmium yellow just by itself, and I'm going to paint that on this left side of this pot here. And I'm going to add some Cobalt turquoise and make this really bright, pretty green. And I'm letting the yellow bleed right into it. Rinsing my brush again. Now I'm going to pick up some of this cadmium yellow, and I'm going to make some of these marks on this pot. There's some nice yellow, they look like yellow crescent moons. And on the pink pot, or on the blue pot on the left, I'm going to add some Quinacridone rose to the texture at the top. And I'm also going to add some of that to the circles. There. So the pot on the right, I'm going to make this side of it pink, nice light pink, so it's Quinacridone rose reddish, plus a lot of water. And notice how I'm painting and leaving little bits of white showing. I always do this. It's part of my style, I guess. But it makes everything look nice and light and airy, and I just love that look. I'm going to take some permanent red medium, and I'm going to fill in this shape and the other one on the right. And then to make the one on the shadow side look like it's in shadow, I'm going to mix a little permanent red violet, drop that right into the red while it's wet, and into the pink here just on the middle side. I'm not going to put that on this side because I want to leave it light. And now I'm going to add some French ultramarine, very light now on this side. So I'm using a lot of water, and I'm painting very carefully around this pot. I don't want to touch any of the yellow crescents because then I'll get green, and I don't want green. I want this pot to just be blue and yellow. And I'm going to put a nice dark accent at the bottom. Whenever anything is a big heavy thing like a tree or a pot, you want to put a little weight at the bottom, and by weight I mean a dark color, not necessarily black, but a dark hue. So it could be a bluish dark, a brownish dark, or a reddish dark. Now I'm going to mix a 3-color gray. I'm going to use French ultramarine, Quinacridone rose reddish, and gold ochre. And this is going to be my shadow color. So these pots are all casting shadows from left to right. So I'm just putting these colors, this color in here. And now we have a nice light and shadow. And I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to this pot on the wall. just to brighten that green a little bit. And for the hanging pot, it's a terracotta, so I'm going to use permanent red medium plus golden ochre. And that'll give me a nice terracotta color. And I'm going to put a little more gold ochre on that, but I'm going to drop it into the wet paint. So I'm going to be putting more of the gold ochre on the left side. And now for the fence, I'm going to use burnt umber. I'm going to go ahead and mix it right in with that other mixture. And I'm going to put it down very lightly on the back. So just a few light strokes. I already have the pen mark indicating the fence, so I don't need to really illustrate it too much. Plus it's in the background. But just a little bit of a nice brown color to indicate that there's a fence and to give our hanging pot a place to hang. I've got a couple of green dots that I didn't put there on purpose, but they just ended up there for me bringing paint over from my palette to the painting and dripping a little bit of paint. So I want to have a little color down at the bottom as well. So I just want to have gold ochre and a little bit of cadmium yellow, just to kind of give this a nice, warm, sunny base. I didn't want to just leave it white. And I want this color to be more yellow so it's not competing with the brown color in the fence. And when you're painting the color in the light, you don't necessarily have to come right up to the edge of the shadow. You can leave a little bit of white in between if you like, or if you want, you can come right up to the shadow. They both work. So I think my orange flowers are looking a little bit washed out. So I'm going to come back and grab some more Pyrole orange, and I'm going to give them a little more color. I'm also going to mix some of this permanent red medium in with the Pyrole orange. So I'm leaving some of the original Pyrole orange color that I put down, and then I'm putting the darker color at the bottom of each of those shapes. Now I kind of missed a spot here on the left with this big pot. I didn't put the greenery in this section of the planter, so I need to add that. I really wanted to have the greenery cascading over the side. And since this is the sunny side, I'm going to come back in with some cadmium yellow by itself and just add a little bit of yellow to the left side of some of the leaves and greenery to really just emphasize the sun. I'm going to do the same thing here with this greenery. Isn't that beautiful? Just looks like we let the sunshine in. I'm going to add one more line of dark to the bottom of the pots, because even though I put the paint on pretty strongly, it still needs a little extra dark. And I'm going to use some of the same dark to emphasize my little bird wing and tail, so he really stands out. And I'm going to put some of that behind him. And I'm also going to add a little more pink to my flowers on the tall pot. Those couple of nice tall pink flowers. I really like my paintings to be fully saturated with color. I don't like washed out paintings. So I'm going to darken these circles because this is the shadow side of this pot. And I'm going to do one last thing, which is add a little definition to my hanging pot. And I'm going to allow my hanging pot to cast a shadow using burnt umber and permanent red violet. And I'm making a couple more strokes just to give texture to the fence. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe, leave a comment, I'd love to hear from you, and like this video. Thanks for watching and happy painting!